I tried so many things. It's not even funny. I've sold modems door to door. I've sold soap door to door. I've sold sunglass covers door to door. And that, I think, played a very important role in my life in piecing together different experiences. Like they say, multidisciplinary things come together to give you a different perspective. You're not only an engineer, not only an accountant, you're not only a marketing person. But without those degrees, without education, self-teaching yourself on how to do things, I think that played an important thing. But I was super dedicated in whatever I did. So either you do it or you don't do it.
Thomas Edison once said that genius is prolonged patience. I am patient enough to be sure. Today, on the 1% project, I'm speaking to Anand Jain. He is the co-founder of CleverTap. CleverTap is world's leading customer engagement and retention platform, valued at $775 million and backed by the likes of Sequoia India, Tiger Global, and others. Anand, in this fascinating conversation, talks about how curiosity and constant tinkering by an average student from a humble background have led him to build multiple successful businesses, the value of thinking in first principles, how understanding the customer is selling, and much more. Among the multiple insights, frameworks, and anecdotes that Anand shares, the one that was most profound for me was his view about teams. He says, your competitors, market, and products will change and evolve. It is the people who will decide whether you win or lose. If you have any feedback about this conversation, speaker, or topic recommendations, you can drop me a line at pritish@1%.live. Subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to it, and you can sign up to the 1% Project's newsletter at 1%.live for the key insights and show notes from this conversation and every other conversation. Welcome, Anand, to the 1% Project.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about your journey, your early life, from one bedroom, rented apartment, an average student, to the co-founder of CleverTap. How do you reflect on that?
It's incredible from where I am now to look back. Growing up, one of the things I quickly realized that I am not cut out for academics. I'm more of a learn by doing it, and also certain areas where I was not very strong. For example, biology, chemistry, algebra. These are subjects I just couldn't get my head around. So very quickly that eliminated options in life. So you could not do this, you could not get into the science stream. And when you realize you're not good at math, probably that leaves out some of the other options. I think what's important is to know what you're not good at. Once you know that, you can then focus on something else. So for me, I've been a tinkerer all my life. When I say tinkerer, my mom used to sleep in the afternoon and I would open up like all the gadgets we had in the house back then. So whether it was the fan, it was the television, the remote control of the television. So I would open them up, trying to figure out how does this damn thing work. And of course, obviously there's nothing in there that would make sense to like a 12-year-old. I mean, a television those days had cathode ray tube. That was a CRT television. It had capacitors. It has those things. And you just would not know how is it able to get the television signal and show it. I started reading. I started going to the flea market in Ahmedabad. I started figuring out things for myself, got hold of a PC board, myself a soldering iron. So when you're not good at academics and when you don't have too many friends, you have a lot of time on your hands. I used all that time to teach myself, or I taught myself first the electrical stuff, fixing irons, fans, televisions, cordless phones. And then I graduated to fixing electronics, again, for the neighborhood. And that was all fun. That used to net me some pocket change. But I guess the point I'm trying to underline is that I did not have a set career. For example, like some people want to grow up and become something. I did not have anything. My only objective was to survive. And why did I want to survive? When I was 12 years old, I lost my dad. And I said I used to stay in a one-bedroom rented apartment. You had to make things work. We'd be hand to mouth, stretched on income. So I had to jump in. Now, if you know how to fix electrical and electronic stuff, you could get 20 rupees here and there, 50 rupees. It was good money. You just had to spend a lot of time doing that away from studies. But the good thing that happened was that since I did not have a fixed thing, hey, you will study commerce, do your MBA, and then go work somewhere. Or if you become an engineer, you'll go work somewhere. It actually gave me an opportunity to try out multiple things. And as long as it got me some sort of a pocket money or some money, I'd say daily money, I'd be happy with that. So no salary, but like an every day, if I could do things, I realized that, hey, I enjoy this creation bit. I tried so many things. It's not even funny. I've sold modems door to door. I've sold soap door to door. I've sold sunglass covers door to door. And that, I think, played a very important role in my life in piecing together different experiences. Like they say, multidisciplinary things come together to give you a different perspective. You're not only an engineer, not only an accountant, you're not only a marketing person. But without those degrees, without education, self-teaching yourself on how to do things, I think that played an important thing. But I was super dedicated in whatever I did. So either you do it or you don't do it. Like when you do it, you don't do it a half-assed way. You're not doing it just for money, but you immerse yourself in it. You try to learn as much as you can. So when I taught myself electrical stuff, I actually started figuring out like, hey, how can I can be the best in what I did? There's a Vikram Sarabhai Labs in Ahmedabad, and every Sunday they would allow kids half an hour to go play with their computers, primarily games. I think it was just to familiarize kids with computers. So they had BBC micros back in the days, and I would take my bicycle, go halfway across the city, and I started playing the game until I figured out there is something that controls this game. And if you hit one of those keys, the function keys, which is the edit key, you can actually go to the other side. So it was like equivalent of me opening up the television, saying that, hey, what's behind this screen? Oh, in the back, there are screws. And if I find the screwdriver, I can open it up and I can now see behind the television screen. Similarly, I got an opportunity to go behind the software, behind the game, and I saw code. And I obviously had no idea what it was doing. All I could read was English, go to, for, and these kind of statements. And I said, hey, there's a number there. Let me go change the number. And it changed. It improved the odds of the game in my favor. And I said, this is very cool. I actually did not have to solder anything. I did not have to break open something and put it back together. This is incredible. Like I can just change things. And I can do this with a key. And that piqued my interest. I then got full-fledged into software back in the days with languages like DBase, Fox Pro. One thing led to the other. I felt very confident programming stuff. I then, at the age of 18, I started my own private limited company, which was a big deal in those days. For some reason, if you start one, you call it the managing director. And I felt very important and I felt like I arrived on the scene. Hey, this young kid who's not good at studies and who did not inherit wealth is now the managing director of a company. Of course, there were only two people because you need two directors to start a company. So it was a marriage of convenience with my other partner. Now they say founders, but back in the day, it used to be, hey, there are two directors. These are partners in the firm. And we got by writing software, assembling PCs, and doing odd jobs here and there, like repairing printers, supplying floppy drives, things like that. And then the business came crashing down because we had no idea how to run the business. So just because you know how to write software and just because you know how to assemble a PC does not mean you run a business. So both of the partners, me and my other guy, like we had a fight on how to do things, and business shut down. A month later, I'm selling modems door to door. And in one of those instances, I was very good, by the way, at modem selling. And because not only you sell the modem, but back in the late 90s, you also have to tell people, what do you do with that? So there was no demand for modems. You have to go door to door in the industrial areas of Ahmedabad. And you have to say, hey, if you have a modem, you have to have a telephone line to begin with. If you have a PC, and if you buy not only the modem, but also the browser that comes along with it. So you have to buy two things. You can get onto the internet. And you go and you train them internet. So you sell them the modem, 30 minutes, you're showing them around Yahoo, Alta Vista back in the days, Excite browser, Docpile, create an email address for them. And then they're off. They're trying to use that. A couple, 3 days later, they'll call you and say, hey, I'm done with the internet. What else? There's no more things to do. So anyway, went through that journey. In one of those instances, I met an entrepreneur. He's trying to set up his company in Ahmedabad. And he was from the Silicon Valley. And he was struggling because not only did he want the modem and the browser, but he also wanted to set up some servers. Now, being the tinkerer I am, in the daytime, I used to sell modems. In the nighttime, I would be in the office pretty much until early hours of the morning. Because the office had internet, like my office had internet, I would learn things from the internet, how to set up servers, how to configure them, and all sorts of technical things. So I was able to help this person set up their servers. He was super impressed. He literally offered me a job and I was earning 2,500 rupees back in the days. He said, hey, if you know how to write code, I can give you 25,000 rupees. It was huge for me, given my background. Anyway, I never switch jobs for money, etc. I think that's fine. Money is the outcome. It's not the objective. Long story short, I rejected the offer. 2-3 years later, I met that same person. So life took us some turns. I ended up with a software company. I was a junior programmer there, writing code in Java. And I happened to meet this person in the hallway, the same entrepreneur from the Silicon Valley. And he said, hey, what are you doing? I thought you were selling modems. I said, that was good, 2-3 years. But I taught myself how to write code, how to write Java code. And I did a little course in CDAC, New Delhi, and I'm now qualified like Java programmer. And they gave me a job. I said, hey, what are you doing here? He said, your company is collaborating with mine. And I did not see you in the town hall this morning. I said, yeah, I was busy with doing something. So I said, but you know what? I built something very cool. So I want to show that to you. So I had built some distributed computing stuff involving 3, 4 PCs. And he saw that and he took me to the vice president's office saying that, hey, you need to make this person the project lead for what we signed up this morning. Out of the blue, I'm like, wow, I don't even know what project they're talking about, but somehow I'm now the important guy in the room. They made me the project lead. And that led me to my few trips to the US. Then I finally got a job offer. And believe it or not, as a commerce graduate, second class commerce graduate is what I call it. I think 53% marks. And I got a H1B to go work in the US in one of the hottest Silicon Valley companies that this gentleman founded. They raised $200 million in their first round of funding. And then again, you don't give up tinkering. So you land up in the Silicon Valley. And it's not like your little home ground Ahmedabad anymore. You're in the big league. There are people talking all sorts of fancy enterprise technology stuff, and you have no idea. So you have to get back into the learning mode. So I did that for 6.5 years, moved back to India in 2006, started a B2C startup called Burp, restaurant reviews. If you've used Yelp in the US or Zomato now in India, it's like that. Ran it for 3 years, exited to Network 18, and then started CleverTap. I guess the underlying theme there is I started B2C, then I said, hey, what the hell? Like, what not do a B2B startup? And I did a B2B startup. So I guess the theme is to keep learning, not be comfortable in whatever life, what spot you find in life. And if you keep your options open, if you keep learning and are never set in your ways, you'll get phenomenal opportunities. So that is the perspective coming up the ranks, if you will. And now it's all cool. Hey, Anand, the entrepreneur, we've done couple of ventures. One thing I also did, as if the B2C and B2B was not enough, after I came back from the US, I noticed the problem of pigeons in India. There's a lot of pigeons. It seems surprising. You never notice these things when you're living in India. But after having done my stint in the US, you're like, oh, noisy pigeons. They're on my air conditioner. They're in the balcony. They're everywhere. So I designed a bird spike. And a bird spike is like a foot long, like spiky kind of thing. And you can put it on the ledges. You can put it on air conditioners. You can put it on surfaces. And pigeons don't come and sit on the surfaces. So while the B2C like startup was going on, this was also my side project. So I ran a manufacturing unit and a B2C startup. But these days I'm fully focused on CleverTap. So anyway, that's the journey. My point is, no one told me, hey, you will grow up and become an engineer, or you will go into the manufacturing business, or you have a thesis on B2C, or you'll do B2B because the TAM is huge. I think you notice a problem and you say, okay, anyone could solve it. So can I? So I'll jump in and solve it to the best of my capability. Long story short, but this is what I did.
That's fascinating. You've done so much of sales. While you were technical, you mentioned selling modems, you're selling soap, and you've done it door to door, and you've actually done it potentially online as well. And these pigeon spikes, bird spikes. How is listening to the customer selling?
That's an incredible question. You always go in from the seller point of view, but you really need to empathize with the person who you're selling to understand why are they buying or what could make them buy your product. I'll give you a soap anecdote and then maybe I can talk about B2B. When I was selling soap, it used to be an unbranded soap that I used to use like a wax candle to seal the plastic package. And then that was the night activity. Daytime, I would go ring doorbells, talk to housewives or their maid. And you ring the doorbell and you're like, hey, I'm selling this soap. And they're like, no, we use this other branded soap and we're very happy with it. And I'm like, this is better. But how do you prove that? I don't have a budget for television advertising and I'm some local guy trying to make my ends meet. So you say, try it. And once they tried it, and of course, you have to time it like that. So you have to go in the early kind of part of the latter part of the day, you can do something else. But when they're about to wash their clothes, you say, you know what, take a bucket full of water and try using this as the soap. So literally like an A/B test. It's funny that we for soap and then they see the results and they're like, okay, what will it cost? And you say, it's 8 rupees. The other branded one is 12 rupees. It's not about the 4 rupees. They're like, okay, we buy it. And where do we get the next one? I said, I'll come back to you like a week later. And that's how you start selling that. Now, important thing to realize is what are the concerns or doubts of the person buying it? They don't want to buy unbranded stuff. They have expensive clothes maybe, or they have a uniform or something very important that, that they wear to work or school. And they don't want to ruin it because you only have one of those or maybe two of those. So there was definitely doubt, uncertainty when you are a nobody. Now, if you translate that to B2B sales, listening to the customer or even in B2C context, you have to understand where is the other person coming from. The other person probably has similar concerns, but at a different scale. Your technology is untested or unproven, or Your technology might be great because you said it is great, but they have no way to find that out. How would you assess? How would they assess it? And maybe the product you're selling involves months worth of integration before they can even see the dashboard or they can see something. Not true for CleverTap, but I'm just giving you an example here. With CleverTap, you can integrate in weeks, probably days to get going. But larger enterprise software is a different beast. But again, I think the point of view is the same. Make sure that the customer trusts you or the prospect trusts you before they put a signature. Make them feel comfortable. And literally the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So you say, hey, try it. And I'll invest my resources. I'll invest my time to make sure that it works for you. So when during the soap selling days, I would sit there until they would wash, obviously, until they wash their clothes, they hang it to dry. And thankfully, Ahmedabad is a very hot place. So in an hour, you could actually see the results and they would compare and they say, yeah, this one's better. That's how you do the work. So that's the customer point of view. I would say it's very important to listen, to understand what their concerns are. And you got to understand both their articulated and unsaid concerns. And that comes from experience.
That's a great takeaway. Being a great sales is understanding what's between the lines, what is being said, and what the person or the buyer is meant to solve. Very few people actually are able to articulate what they're trying to solve for. They may say, okay, I have a branded product, must be working great. So why do I go, as you mentioned, to a different product? You have learned so many things on your own and you have pioneered so many new things like selling a modem or even understanding how a computer game works. You have learned yourself Java coding with probably a basic certification. What is your learning framework? How do you learn something new?
I call this the zero hypothesis. Like when you start something, you say, I have completely no idea how this thing works, but I'm going to keep an open mind and I'm going to learn. So I don't go online and try to find the best way to do it. Like I said, I learned by doing it. So for me, it was buying a soldering iron back in the days when I used to fix electronic and electrical stuff, buying the soldering iron, buying the solder and figuring out for yourself, buying an LED and trying to see if this LED I can power this up, can the red light, and then you learn, oh, okay, you got, there are certain things you need to do, maybe the polarity of this thing. So now you learn, okay, there is polarity. That means, oh, then you realize the D in the LED stands for diode and diode only allows current in one direction. But you have to infer this. It's very important to infer, to pay attention. Now, I'm sure people who've learned engineering or who are electrical engineers, they've been taught this in the books, but there is a certain joy in figuring out things for yourself from first principles. Learning framework is do it. As long as it doesn't kill you, do it. And then come back and look at what you've learned. And can you have a compounding effect on what you've learned? Can you compound it? Can you build upon that? In the LED example, now I figured out, okay, I can put a switch so it turns on and off. And then you can add other things like resistors, capacitors, probably IC type, like timer ICs, so that you can now have a few LEDs kind of play to your tunes. I think coming from this point of view where you don't know anything, a lot of people say, I know a lot of this or I've read about it and I've read a book on this topic. I think even whether it comes to investing, whether it comes to be software, we just say, hey, what is the first principles? I think that's a very important thing. The joy you will get, you'll remember that learning for life. Like other books, we read a lot of books, we forget everything that's said. But if you deduce things from first principles, if you compound on that learning, these things add up because they say to learn, best way to learn something is to tell it to someone else. So I'm like a kid when I discover something new. I go tell 10 people about it. Hey, do you know like this thing works? And that I think is an important thing because now they may add on to that learning. They may say, yeah, of course we know this. Did you know something else? And then you go and try that. So I don't have a fancy framework for this, but I would say just try it. What is the worst that could happen? You want to write a web page? Go for it. Don't figure out a YouTube video to how to create web pages. Create it. It may not be the world's best looking web page, but at least you created something. So the act of creation is the act of learning.
You being a technical founder, CleverTap, what has been a success as a technical founder and what have you learned?
Technical founders typically start from the problem statement as opposed to the market opportunity or the competitors in this space. When we started CleverTap 9 years ago, we were just fascinated by data. Everyone has data. Everyone talks about data. Hey, we have data lake, we have big data, we have data warehouse. If you have all this data, why don't you treat me well? Why don't you give me products I came looking for? And you realize very quickly that they say we have the data, but we don't know how to use it. Even if we put some analysts on it, if you put our data science on it, it's not real time. So the problem statement was technical. And we said, we will build a data technology. We will invent a database that is that does not only hold your data, but also makes it actionable. The hypothesis being the amount of data in the world is going to grow exponentially. Number one. Number two, phones are going to solve more and more use cases. We depend upon our phones for pretty much everything these days. And number three, as a consumer, your attention span will become even shorter. Gone are the days where I remember like some people in where I used to stay used to spend 4 hours in the morning going through every little newspaper item. We don't spend four hours consuming news these days. We want it bite-sized, we want it quick before we move on to the next topic. So how do you solve for that? So to me, being a technical founder, that was the starting point, as opposed to a spreadsheet exercise of how big is the TAM, who are the competitors. Let me go speak to a few of their customers to figure out like an opportunities where I could plant my startup, a niche where I can like the tip of the spear, if you will. We did not do any of that. So our questions were, why is no one solving this? And then you realize, oh, everyone's solving it for a very narrow reason. So there are email products that only deliver emails to you. There are SMS products that only send SMSs, and they don't care about user experience. They're in the business of email delivery. They're in the business of SMS. They're in the business of some sort of like a message delivered to the user. But can you use the data to make sure that when you deliver the message to the user, it is to the person at the time, with the content, on the device, in the context, and it goes on and on. And for that, you need to use data. So I think that angle of attack, or what they say in startups, what is that one secret that you know that others don't know that is going to make you very successful? I think that one secret for us was, let's make this data actionable. And we could not find anything in the market that was doing that. So we invented our own. As good engineers, technical founders, we're like, okay, if you can't find it, you make it. And it was incredible because the next 30 months of our startup life, we were inventing, it's like an engine of the car. If you come up with an engine like a V12 engine, let's say from first principles, you made a good engine. And if you show it to people and they're like, okay, this is great. Where are the wheels? Where is the steering wheel? Where's the accelerator? Because you need all of that to use the engine. It's like a CPU by itself, it's useless. Like you need like the peripheral devices. You need everything else. So we made the engine. We made this database. And now we said, we have to now build the rest of the stuff to make it useful. But that is the difference. And that is, as a technical founder, your starting point is technology, and you validate your hypothesis through technology, saying that, is anyone else solving this problem? And when you figure out no one else is doing it, you say, okay, we are going to do it. Like, how hard can it be? And I think that became the moat, that became the core technology that powers the rest of the product.
I've never thought about how non-technical founders think, and they actually think like that. Itna bada hai market. As you have grown, now CleverTap is a big company, been very successful. How do you differentiate yourself from anybody else who's probably providing something same, similar, or entering the market?
That's a continuous challenge for the last 9 years. In the early days, sometimes the investors would ask us, so you wrote your own database? Okay, yeah. And it's real time? I think, yeah. And it's incredibly fast? Yes. So why does it have to be real time? Aisa kya kar rahe ho? Means kyun? Why can it not be slow? We say, who likes slow things? If you could get faster internet, do you want slow internet? They're like, no. I said, yeah, bingo. What if it was incredibly fast? What if you never had to buffer or wait for anything to download? What if it was like real time? And same things. If your flights could reach some destination faster, maybe in 2 minutes, maybe in 5 minutes, wouldn't you like that? Yeah, we'd love it. So that was one set of people, like different set of people, not necessarily in the business context, but just why does the world need such real time? And my example was, hey, let's talk about Google searches. Now, we do Google. It's like muscle memory for us. We go to the browser, we type any junk, anything that we want. Boom, Google tells you the results. And if you don't get the results, you think probably I have not typed the correct query. Maybe I misspelled something or whatever. What if Google said, you know what? I'm searching the vast database of the internet. Hey, it's like trillions of data, trillions of web pages. So can you give me a minute? Like just a minute, not more. I promise to come back in a minute. It would not have been so much fun. We'd be like, no, it's too slow. So we can't allow a minute to a search engine, which means people want faster things. So that was one way to put and talk about that. That's purely technology. When we're selling the product to some of the customers or prospects, how do you differentiate what you do versus what everyone else does? And I think that's more of a philosophical discussion you have, that they come back and say, you know what, my existing marketing stack or growth stack has these 12 products. They're best of breed. Like I said, like the email only solves for email, the SMS only solves for SMS, A/B testing only does A/B testing. And we're like, actually, it is not called best of breed. These are called point solutions. They're like, what do you mean? Yeah, they only solve a particular narrow thing. So what if your A/B testing worked? And then Pritish will see variation A or red color, Anand will see blue color. And can you use that to improve the experience for the rest? No, we cannot do that. Or is that anyway? It doesn't tie into the overall customer experience. And then you see philosophically, you should be using this one product, one brain to run your entire marketing, your entire growth, which does not claim to send better email. It claims to solve for user retention. So it's not like we're trying to invent better email or we're trying to sell email faster or push notifications or what you may. It's actually saying that the person that just downloaded your app, can you retain them forever? Can you make sure that you never lose a single user? So you go from being a user to a registered user or a signed up user, from signed up user to their, probably they take up the trial. If you're some sort of a subscription economy, or if you're an e-commerce company, maybe they buy a product, then they come back and buy it like another product, repeat transaction, and so on and so forth. Now, would you not want one brain to run all of this versus multiple products? Why would you need multiple products to begin with? So that becomes a philosophical discussion. That's from a prospect perspective. Now, employee perspective, they're like, hey, Anand, why don't we only sell analytics? Why don't we only sell email? Because we do all of that. We are in an email fight with this company, so we should only sell that. And you say, no, hang on. We are not ripping off the seats of the car and selling them and competing with a sofa or a couch. It is part of the car that someone is buying. You sell the whole thing. You're not ripping out the air conditioner and competing with air conditioner manufacturers. It's part of one unit, which happens to be called the car. So this entire product, you can't break this up. It has to work in unison. And that also is philosophical. But yeah, the multiple times when everyone's tempted, I call this reversion to the mean, where people want to become very common. It's very hard for you to stay at the edges and say, we exist for a philosophical reason. We did not start CleverTap or build the product because of market. We actually trying to solve for the user. So Anand doesn't like to be spammed. Pritish does not like to be spammed. I don't know anyone who would say, hey, yes, I am looking forward to more marketing emails from the world. Send them to me. But we do look forward to messages from our friends, from our family. So what is the difference? They know you very well. They know that, hey, this is the morning person. So maybe a message in the morning is better than some late night. Or they know that you're a party person and then they might say, hey, let's go and check out a few good places. Let's go bar hopping this weekend. The difference is brands don't know you or they pretend to not know you. Even if they have data on you, they say, hey, we'll treat everyone the same. And that's not how the world works. So differentiator is being differentiated, or to put this value proposition across to prospects, to employees, to the investor ecosystem is hard work. Not everyone gets it. But you know what? We've been at it, like I said, it's been a 9-year journey for us. We've been at it for 9 years and we continue to invest in that, both as marketing material, FAQs, cheat sheets for the sales team, marketing team, new employees.
You say that CleverTap is a product first company. What does that mean?
There are multiple ways to build a company. You can innovate on sales. So no matter what product is, the salespeople are slick. They talk smooth. They wear good clothes and they sell products. There could be marketing-led companies, which rely on marketing, brand differentiation. Product-led to me is you put product in the center of the organization, in the center of everything that you do. And product being a proxy to what your customer needs and wants. That means you need to inherently understand what your customer wants. How do they run their business? What are their challenges? And you bake that into the product. Now, when you bake that into the product becomes in the center of the organization. You don't need, so good marketing is welcome, but you don't need too much marketing. You don't need slick salesmen. You just need people to facilitate that. Marketing just needs to throw a light on the product as opposed to trying to sell something that is non-existent, because a lot of times we have seen photographs of products and what actually shows up, or we have seen brand promises that don't live up, or photographs of a hotel. Then you check in and you figure out, oh, this is like a swimming pool is 8x2, but in the picture it looked like a massive swimming pool, Olympic size, because some guy with a camera got very creative. So how can you be not creative in marketing? How can you not misrepresent the product? How can you say Like I said, try it. The best way to figure out what my product can do for you is to try it, to do a POC with us, do a trial with us. Or here are other customers and this is how they use the product. This is the difference it has made in their lives. So I think to me, that is product. That is one aspect of being product first company. Second aspect is to figure out the unarticulated needs of the customer. Like that means you have to be close to the customer. You got to figure out the challenges or the problem statements they solve to, for them, it's routine. That's how the world works. It's just how I do things. But to you as a technologist, as a product builder, you figure out, you know what, it doesn't have to be like this. So let's go back to the drawing board. Let's figure out, brainstorm with the team and come up with a better way to solve this. Like I said, why should a report take days? Why is your data not actionable? Let's make it actionable. Why is email only thinking of email delivery as opposed to, hey, how many people were we able to impress and make happy with this email? So that to me is product led. And then you hire the best people for the job. You hire brilliant designers, brilliant engineers, brilliant product people, product marketing folks who can just focus on this aspect in different ways, whether it's designing the product, whether it's building, talking to the customer. And if you go through several iterations of this, you naturally become a product because everyone, sales, marketing, they now look up to the product to solve the problem, as opposed to getting creative with whatever they think they are selling and just selling that. And then there's a big mismatch. What someone thought they bought, what actually gets delivered to them. You don't want that mismatch.
So basically, the sales and the marketing teams say that the product is the hero.
Yes. And my product is going to make the customer the hero. So you buy the product, you will see an improvement in all your business metrics that you want to track, that you are tracking. I can maybe give one more example here. There are three kinds of products. There are products that increase the top line. There are products that save the bottom line or help you reduce expenses. There is third kind is which makes your business more efficient. Now, the second category of the product, the one that save you money, of course, you cannot go negative on that. So the best is after a certain time, you'd fail to see any advantage of that. These are cost cutting products. The efficiency ones, again, efficiency sometimes is the mind of the user. Or maybe if they quantify it also, it's a little abstract. Yeah, your workforce became 25% more productive because we killed email and now it's replaced by some chat solution. Okay, but I still get emails. The first kind, which is I'll help you grow your business, is the most promising kind because you're talking about growth. Like I said, like everyone wants more growth. Companies want to grow, employees want to grow. And I say, my product will help you grow faster. And here is how. And once you do that, you are in an infinite game. You're not restricted by anything. The longer someone is with you the longer someone adopts your product and uses it, the better results they're going to see. So that to me is product centric building as opposed to locking someone in with a 10-year contract or a 5-year and like now they have no way to get out. And
When you kicked off CleverTap, you built the product for almost everybody. Today, when you look back, would you focus on building something for a niche first, or would you build it for everyone?
a great question. Hindsight, they say is 2020. And building CleverTap first time, there were a few things, and we said this has to be applicable for multiple industries. It has to work for multiple geographies, and this product will also work for different kinds of what we in technical terms call ICP, ideal customer profile. But we can have multiple of those. That means on one end could be extremely large corporations, and I'm not talking about Fortune 500 corporations. I'm not selling to 3M or JCB or Dow Chemicals. I'm talking more about the new 500, the digital native 500, digital brands that ship to customers like ride hailing, streaming apps, those kind of things, the digital economy. So it has to work for those extremely large businesses, but also, hey, about the startup that's just barely getting off the ground, close to Series A or about to get their Series A, it has to work for them as well. So that's how we started. That's how we built the company, which I think in the early days led to utter chaos because people now don't know. They don't know who should we sell to. Is the large bank our customer? Is the neo bank our customer? Can I sell to a brick and mortar like a retailer? And there was a lot of this correction. Hey, no, not this segment. Sure, the product can work for them, but they'll take 24 months to decide because in their life, in their cycles, the wheels run very slow. Go talk to a large retailer or an extremely large bank, one of the largest in India or anywhere, and they'll take 12 to 18 months just to evaluate. If you talk to a digital native product or digital native company first. In the morning, they'll take 3-4 hours to evaluate because they're tech savvy. They understand what you've brought to and in a couple of days, you're live with the invoice. So the contracts has been signed. Everything is good. You can collect your check. And my point is, in the startup land, you don't have 18 to 24 months. You're fighting against time. So sorting that ICP first would have helped us. Actually, it did. We did naturally gravitate towards that kind of segment, digital first. But since we did not define it very clearly, there was a lot of times when the sales team would bring something to the table, or we got inbound queries, and we would, after a lot of deliberation, a lot of discussion, we would have to say no, or we would have to say only if you move very fast. I would have done a better job of defining that, maybe narrowing it in the early days and saying only this segment. Maybe not just streaming apps or ride hailing businesses, but maybe digital native. Any company that's born after the year, say 2010, is like a digital company first. So that's the segment we are going to go after. So if you meet a company at a bar, you can say, hey, when were you born? If they say post 2010, okay, we can sign you up. If they're old, then you just leave them alone. I think that's what the better definition would have helped us. Then,
how do you think about building teams?
Your competitors will change, markets will change, products will evolve. It's the people who will decide whether you win or lose. A team is a shared set of objectives or goals. Now, when you talk about sports, for example, they know that they have to score more goals than the opponent, or they have to score more runs if you're using cricket as an analogy, and that's how they win. Now, in companies, the teams might not have, because there is no finite set of competitors. You don't know what the winning metric is. You don't know whether more revenue, more employees, bigger logos, more market share, profitability. What is the winning metric? And some teams may not even be responsible for that. Okay, I'm from the marketing team. I don't care about profitability. Sure, I do care as my company, but I don't care. Like, I want to put up a bigger billboard. So I think you have to give them shared goals. You have to give them like some sort of an objective and say, this team fights and wins this objective. Now it's an arbitrary line that you draw in the air and you say, this is what not in the air, but in stone, and say, this is what the goal is going to be. If you're in the product team, you give it a product goal. I will improve trust and reliability of my product. I'll make sure that we reduce downtime, or we increase the speed, or make it more user-friendly, whatever the objective might be. And then as a team, you find the best set of people to collaborate and achieve that objective. Exactly like how sports teams work. That means some people can be on the bench for a while if they're out of form, and then you pick the best players to do that. So I use this analogy quite a bit when I'm thinking about teams. One thing I want to talk about is when I'm hiring someone, when I'm interviewing people, I do ask them 2 or 3 questions. So one of the questions is, have you played a team sport? Have you been, and it doesn't have to be like it can be any team collaboration. It could be any activity where there are multiple people involved. So you have to know when to yield, when you have to collaborate, you have to go talk to other people. You can't be the brilliant scientist, like brilliant person who just says, leave me alone in a room and I'll see you in 2 hours with the answer. In the process of the interview, sometimes, or actually all the times now, we throw up a problem statement that even we don't know how to solve. And we say, hey, let's work together on the whiteboard and solve this thing. So that kind of throws a light on the teamwork. The second thing is, would these odds of your success improve if you were to hire this person? And that is a magical question, because if the answer is yes, and you hire the person, both the odds improve for that person because they win when you win and you win when they win. That's a common alignment. So I think, to me, that I look for these things in the team. I believe in smaller teams, not like an army of like a big size. 2 pizza teams or smaller, maybe 8 to 10 people team at tops, keeps everyone aligned, gives everyone visibility. If you had a team of 50 people, no one would know each other. That means the trust levels would be low. That means it leads to all sorts of problems. So I think teamwork also depends on the architecture of the team. How are you going to organize the team? Who's going to do what? And who's responsible for running the show in the team?
Recently, you had put on social media that you were reading Moments of Truth. Any thoughts, any learnings from the book?
I am about 3/4 done. But one of the things I learned was the decision making should happen close to where the action is. And I'll make this example real. So in the book, the person who wrote the book was the president of SAS airline, the Scandinavian airline. And they said if the flight attendant saw that something was broken in the plane, in the previous days before he became the president of the airline, that flight attendant would report it to the captain, who would report it to the ground staff, it would go like 20 hops up the chain. And finally, some important person in the organization with a C-level title would have to decide with zero knowledge on what the impact of the ground level is, which led to slower decision making. Now, in a lot of companies, there are power centers. This 7 set of people or this important person will decide everything. What I learned from that book was you can enable or empower people closer to the ground, closer to the reality. So if it was a matter of, say, we have all checked into hotels, if you were at the reception and you said, hey, I don't have a non-smoking room, but it's great if you can give me one because I'm allergic or whatever. And they had the authority to do that. In some incredible places that I've been to, that person had the authority and they would say, no problem, I'll take care of that. Can you upgrade me to business class? It does not go up like, 5 levels. Quick look at my profile, how much I've traveled, etc. And they can decide. That's been my learning from that book. Now, which in software parlance or technology parlance means your product managers can decide. It doesn't come all the way to the CPO. You have to empower them to decide, not go up to their boss. Sure, they can ask an opinion, but not ask them for a decision, which means they need to go talk to the customer, figure out pain points, and come back and say, hey, I've made a decision. This is how we're going to do it from now on. And that is one, they call this the moment of truth. This is the moment of truth when a decision has to be made. Who makes that decision? How far is it up from the reality? And I think that was a brilliant thing. That was my takeaway from the book.
What are your views on Elon Musk? He's the biggest tinkerer, or probably the most celebrated tinkerer presently.
My take on Elon Musk is I think he's a first principles thinker. For a lot of his products, it was from first principles. Can we make a rocket reusable? And he does not come from that industry. He does not come from aviation or defense or any of that background. He's just a smart engineer. Can we make cars run on battery? Now, there were golf cars before that, golf carts. Before that, there was some industry that was trying to do that. But he thought from first principles and he made it his thing. That's it. There's no backup. It's not a hybrid. That's the only thing it does. And if you consistently look at everything that Elon has done, whether it's solar power, whether it's the Boring Company, whether it's the cars or the rocket and a few other things, you think that this is all derived from first principles. There is a natural harmony in the world that this person thinks is. And if things don't go like that, he said, I'll take it upon myself to fix it. He has a lot of mental capacity to switch context, deduce things from first principles, and figure out a way to solve it. And he puts his skin in the game. I follow him on Twitter and I'm deeply inspired by him. So that's my take on Elon Musk.
That's a great place to close this conversation, Anand. Thanks for being on the show.
Pritish, thank you. I enjoyed the conversation. You are a great host.